Hello everyone, I'm Rick Adams. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Community Corner on Patriot Aid. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to relive the Salem witch trials through the eyes of a local author. Carlotta Holton will be here to discuss her latest book, Salem Pact. Then later, Orly Wright-Kopp of Blue Lemon Media is going to talk about how her online communications company is expanding their reach into the tri-state area. We'll be back with the show in a moment. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for a place where you can laugh and snort and make other funny noises? Then you'll want to watch Tickle You, Cartoon Network's brand new University of Laughter, where kids can laugh along with our hosts.
Hello.
They make funny noises too. Tickle You, weekdays from 9 to 11 on Cartoon Network.
What if your favorite shows were available to you anytime you felt like watching them? Television nirvana? No. Video on demand. From Patriot Media. It's schedule-free TV. A huge library of cable favorites, movies, sports highlights, and premium channels all there at your beck and call. Think of it as an all-you-can-watch television buffet. Yummy.
Tune to Channel 1 and watch what you want when you want with video on demand from Patriot Media.
Hello, I'm Paul Newman. Every day, thousands of sick and disabled veterans face real emergencies that government programs just can't meet. For more than 80 years, the Disabled American Veterans has been there for them. Across the country, DAV volunteers are working to build better lives for sick and disabled veterans who need assistance. Sometimes they just need a friend, but more volunteers are needed. If you want to help, contact the Disabled American Veterans. Thank you.
And welcome back to Community Corner. My first guest this evening is Carlotta Holton. She is author of this book, Salem Pact. And Carlotta, nice to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to hear about this because the Salem witch trials, that's always fascinated me, and something tells me with the title of this book and what the story is about, this topic has interested you as well.
Yes, for a great many years I've been interested in the whole issue of the witchcraft trials. In fact, I suppose it was back in 11th grade, I had an American literature teacher who introduced me to the works of Nathaniel Hawthorne, who was a writer in Salem. And as a matter of fact, his great-great ancestor was one of the two hanging judges.
And I understand he changed his last name, or he added an E to his last name?
Yes, he added a W to the name.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So in order not to be associated with what had occurred.
Exactly.
And what had occurred there, especially with the Hawthornes back then, with the Salem witch trials?
Well, 19 men and women were accused of and tried and murdered as witches. And most of them were hung. One was pressed to death, and several others died waiting for their turn to be examined in jail. So yeah, it's a travesty in history, in American history.
And who were the people that put these other people to death?
Actually, it was a few young girls who were making the accusations, and back then they believed in such a thing as spectral evidence. When I was going back and doing some research and reading the actual transcripts, it would be enough to say, oh, there's a ghost behind him, can't you all see it? And rather than saying, what, are you crazy, the people would say, yes. It was a very superstitious time. They were living in very isolated situation.
In Massachusetts?
In the colony of Massachusetts, in Salem itself. At that time, there were two Salems. There was Salem Village, where the action of this book takes place, and there was Salem proper, and that's more of the city, the seaport area, where the actual hangings and the trials took place. So the atmosphere also is very brooding and wonderful up there.
And are these false rumors, or did we ever find that out for sure, that these rumors were false from these girls?
It wasn't until the 1950s that actually Salem, the town of Salem, came out with an apology and cleared all the names of those who were unjustly accused.
A little too late after that.
A lot too late, yes, yes.
And your book, you kind of tie in the Salem witch trials with your book. And if you could just tell us about your book and kind of how the story unfolds.
Well, the story unfolds, first, the premise is in 1692, 19 men and women were murdered as witches. It's the present. Could it happen again today? And the answer is yes. And the circumstances are that this is set in the present, although it does not seem like that in the first few chapters, because it's an historical reenactment conducted by a university experiment. And all of the characters have been researched by history. There are a few that I've interjected in there who were not real people, but a lot of them were. They must speak in the vernacular of the time, Old English. They can never come out of character. They are visited by strangers a couple times a year, during which time they may have no communication other than answering questions.
So they're truly
Trapped.
reliving this.
Absolutely. And then you've got the isolated community, because they are not allowed to leave the experiment, the village. They have no communication. There's no iPods, no televisions, no telephones, nothing. So they are set in that area. When you add those elements with the fact that you've got an overzealous patriarchal leader, in this case the Reverend Samuel Parris, I've chosen him to be the evil one.
So these are just characters from
yes.
the creation of Carlotta's mind.
No, well, Reverend Parris was really
okay. So you're
a real
incorporating.
character. So I've incorporated him into it. Some of the other characters I've added to it. But the people who are destined to die are real. You know, they were based on real historical characters. So you've got all that, and then if you're in such an isolated community with no recourse to leave, you're governed by this patriarchal leader, you're all alone, and what happens frequently is that superstition and myths and legends are good fodder there, and when you have that, oh, that person dresses differently, so they're different, so maybe they're a witch.
Right, right.
So you've got all of that.
Also, I know another one of the elements you mentioned is the mob psychology. And what exactly is that?
Absolutely. Well, as I said, if you take all these elements together, and Reverend Parris is so adamant about reenacting this experiment to the nth degree that he is able to brainwash some of his followers to do exactly what he says. So when he tells them, if he should tell them to harm someone, the people will do it as a whole. And when you do it as a whole, it absolves the individual, because you've lost your identity. You are part of the mob. When the mob does something, it's not my fault.
Right, right. So that's
I didn't do it. It was the mob, exactly. And I think back in 1692, this is exactly what happened, is that it wasn't just, it started out as one or two people accusing and turned into a situation where everyone jumped on the bandwagon.
And with your story, from my understanding, what happens is that the people reenacting this, it actually becomes a real life story.
Yes, that's correct.
So the people reenacting this actually do die, and
some of them do. Yes.
So there's a lot of truth to it, and
yes.
as part of this reenactment. So that's fascinating how you've tied that in. And next segment, when we get back from the break, I wanted to talk about. I know the incident in Waco. That was a big incident with David Koresh. I wanted to talk about that a little bit, because you mentioned that it could happen again. It did happen, and I'm sure it's going to happen again somewhere down the road. So we are here with Carlotta Holton. She is author of Salem Pact, and we'll have more with Carlotta after the break. You keep it right here.
No fear for 60 minutes. We don't like them, they don't like us. It's everything that moves out there. Everything that moves. Respect is not given, it is earned. Come on, they don't want to win, y'all on the field. Let's go. This is what it's all about right here. This is what they champion. NFL is all about.
See this? Know what this is? It's an anchor, a dead end, a technological one-trick pony. That's why when anything new comes along with satellite, either you can't get it or you have to buy new equipment. With cable, on the other hand, when something new comes along, you've got it. Video on demand, done. Local high def, easy. High-speed internet, piece of cake. Yep, when you're connected to Patriot Media, you've got it all.
I get people involved in saving the environment. That's why I volunteer.
When I teach computer skills, I help kids succeed in school. That's why I volunteer.
I helped raise awareness about the hazards of tobacco use. That's why I volunteer, to make a difference.
If you know middle or high school students who make a difference by doing volunteer work, have them ask their school principals about applying for a Prudential Spirit of Community Award, or encourage them to call 1-888-450-9961.
And welcome back, everybody, to Community Corner right here on Patriot 8. There you saw that beautiful poster of the Salem Pact. That's the book written by Carlotta Holton. And you are a Chester resident. And
Yes.
What kind of writing background do you have? Because I guess writing is in your blood.
Oh, yes, I love to write. I've been writing for probably about 25 years. I've been a journalist. I've written for the New York Times, the Star-Ledger. I've been a staff writer for and an editor for the Bergen Record. Etc.
Well, a book is a little different than a newspaper in what ways?
Yes, but you know, it's a wonderful thing because when you're writing for a newspaper, everything has to be objective and everything has to be factual. And because I do love to write and I do have an imagination, this allows me that venue to, you know, experiment.
Yeah, and that's a great way of doing it, and kind of going. You never know what direction you're going to go, and
exactly.
I guess when you're able to put those creative ideas from your mind to paper, that must be a thrilling feeling, and
it's very exciting.
Coming up with the finished product. And before break, we were talking about that something like the Salem witch trials can occur again, and it has with David Koresh. How can you kind of compare that situation that occurred in Waco, Texas back in the 90s to the Salem witch trials? What are the elements that were there?
Same as in my book. You have a patriarchal leader.
David Koresh.
Koresh thought he was Jesus, and you know, he was in an isolated type of commune. They didn't have a lot of interaction with the outside world. When that happens, it also turns people, their focus inward, and imagination starts working, not always for the good. And you know, that's what can occur.
Yeah, and were there ever any other instances where there were similar situations?
Well, I believe that Jim Jones out in Guyana had his followers down there, and he was able to have this charismatic personality. You couldn't resist him. Again, you were in an isolated area, and what choice did you have? It was a lot of psychological manipulation is what happens, and I think even in this book, although there is some violence in it, it's more subtle. It's a psychological violence that occurs, very subtle.
Right.
Mind manipulation is really what it's all about, and that's why the people in Guyana drank the poison Kool-Aid. You know?
Right. And what are your feelings about it occurring again in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I think it could happen again if you have the right circumstances and the right
sure it's going on
environment.
right now somewhere.
Probably is somewhere that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, and maybe over the next year we'll hear of something coming out of nowhere, but maybe it's something that's been developing.
It's been brewing, exactly.
Is there any way of stopping that from happening?
Boy, I don't know. I think you'd have to speak to a psychologist on that. I'm not sure. I think part of it's human nature.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to think that something like this could occur. There are all these followers of one crazy person, or a few crazy people, and that to me is mind-boggling how that can occur, because it's like you're taking your individuality away from yourself, and you're just in pursuit of this crazy, crazy leader.
Exactly.
And with your book, Salem Pact, what are the emotions that you feel people will take away from the book?
I think there's a satisfactory sense of retribution, especially with the ending, which involves a child. I think that I'm hoping that they get a sense, because I was very specific in wanting to create a mood in this particular genre of mystery, of the New England setting, the tall pine trees, the brooding atmosphere. It's so saturated, almost like a primeval area, because this is where the Pilgrims first landed. So it's a new beginnings. So I'm hoping those two things. And of course that the fact that we don't repeat this again, but who knows?
Well, let's hope God is watching over us where that stuff like this doesn't occur again. And have you been out to that neck of the woods? I would think a lot of your research maybe came from visiting and being there and experiencing that.
I used to have family in Cambridge, so I would be up there at least twice a year, every year for I can't tell you how many years. So yes, and I've also had the opportunity to read through some of the original transcripts, which were very difficult to get through because they are in Old English. And I did not want to, I knew I could never get away with putting that kind of material in there because people would just not read it.
Right.
And it's too bogged down.
Yeah, you have to put it in layman's words and terms.
Exactly.
And you've done a very good job of that.
Thank you.
And what is the feel for that area now? I guess they have a lot of tourist attractions there and things of that nature.
Well, it's interesting. Salem used to be known as Witch City, USA, and up until the last, and they have a Haunted Happenings weekend all the time, every Halloween week. And lately they've tried to pull back on this image and rather focus on their seafaring history.
Well, that's probably kind of tough to break away.
I would think so too, yes.
And are there a lot of witches still out there and things along that line?
Well, they have Lori Cabot, who is the official witch of Salem, but she's supposed to be a good witch.
Oh, okay.
So other than that, I can't
We like
speak
those good
too
witches.
much.
We need those good witches out there.
Yeah.
And in your travels, you're promoting this book everywhere. What kind of feedback and response have you been getting from your readers?
I've been getting very good response. The most common thing that people are saying is, when is it going to be made into a movie, and who would you cast in it? So
well, have they
I
had?
That was interesting.
Yeah, I guess they've had documentaries and things on the History Channel and things like that with regards to the Salem witch trials. So why not this?
Right, and I've got the antagonist already typecast, Jack Nicholson.
I can see that. That looks like that can definitely work.
Yes.
And where are you looking to go with the book? I guess a lot of bigger and better things with the book, and
yes,
and maybe a Salem Pact 2?
I don't think so. I have a second book coming out next year, which is called Touching the Dead, and that's short stories based on ethnic superstitions and religions.
So you're really into this whole
I'm very much into it, yes. It's really funny because, being a journalist, everything's so practical and objective and factual, and this is like a real flight of fancy in terms of using my imagination. So I love it. It's great.
Right, and you have another book, Getting Out of Limbo.
Yes.
So this isn't your first book.
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Well, that was a relationship book.
There's a big contrast there.
Yes, coping with difficult relationships.
Oh, okay. And so there is a big difference between that and this. And initially, why did you want to create something like this? Because that is a big jump going from that book to this book.
Well, that one was easier because I had a lot of experience in that area and it was more factual. But this one was, I just love the area. I'm just fascinated. I read Stephen King, I read John Saul.
It's along that type
and I just love,
writing.
Yes, it is.
And so, where is your book available?
Sterling House Publisher, Inc., and at all local bookstores. Or they can reach me at salempact@aol.com.
And you are a Chester resident, and
yes.
I know we were joking in the green room. You've had people come over your house to purchase the book.
Yes, there was an article in the Daily Record, And they had seen it and called up, and I had people showing up on my doorstep in uniform, no less.
So that's one way to promote and get the book out there. You may have to do that throughout Chester and the surrounding towns, just going door to door. And I think it is certainly one of the more fascinating topics that are out there, and it certainly is of interest to many people. And when you think Salem witch trials, you always think of, oh my goodness, how can a travesty like this have happened? And I'm glad you're bringing it to life again, and I'm sure a lot of people are happy about that. And we appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that's Carlotta Holton. She is author of Salem Pact. You heard where you can get it. Go out and check it out. Yeah, we appreciate her time. We appreciate your time. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Rick Adams. We get to do it again tomorrow night. We'll see you then. Good night.